Right, so I got the chance yesterday. I had a gig. It was like a marquee gig in someone's very nice garden, essentially, well, field behind their garden, and they had like a garden room office thing that was like bigger than my house, so that was cool. But I was gigging the Amp1 from BluGuitar because Tony asked, are you going to try it on a gig, and said you're welcome to. So I thought, well, let's do that.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
I guess first of all, let's talk about what the rig was. The Amp1, from the recording out, I went to the front of house, and on the front of house, I run that. The EQ, I kind of put a high pass filter on there just because that's what I would normally do if I was running to front of house off this sort of thing. There's not a presence control on the BluGuitar that I'm aware of. I might give you a close-up of how Tony set up these tone controls, because those are actually, I think, good starting points. I did turn on the noise gate. So that into the Mesa Boogie EV12 open back speaker. Although this is small, it is about 17 kilos. So that and so then the return and effects send went to an HX Effects, which essentially all I used on the actual gig, it was just an hour set that we did, there's a preset that I put together which just has two elephant mans or memory mans kind of doing the Andy Timmons thing, and then I used a little bit of chorus on one song and a little bit of flanger on another. The other part of the rig was using the remote, which I think there's been a pause on production. I spoke to Thomas the other day and, just said about various things. He called me up to kind of hang out for a bit. He hasn't said that he's going to send me an Amp1 yet, but maybe that could be on the cards. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of be thorough-ish with this. And so with this remote, I actually had all of it kind of around me. Obviously, this could have just sat on the amp and you just use a jack to the remote, which is really, really clever, because it's kind of like, well, that is not something where you're going to have to worry about not bringing the right cable and that sort of thing. You can program the Remote 1 essentially to remember the assignments on this sort of thing. So, for instance, I was using the clean most of the time, right? Then for the gain stuff, I was using the vintage channel, and sometimes with the boost if it was a bit of a chunkier gain part. And then for solos, I would use 3 classic, and also kick off the master volume, which then gives you a little bit of a boost up in volume. That works really nicely, but obviously if you've got the boost on and then you jump back to your clean, this boost kind of stays on, unless you kind of program each of the channels with the assignments that you'd want on there, which you can do. So it's kind of pretty clever. The bass player, Jennings, alright, said it kind of looks a little bit like something Behringer might do. I don't know about your thoughts on that. I cannot possibly comment on that. But in terms of sounds and stuff, really happy with it. It just simple, worked really easily. Normally with multi-channel amplifiers, there's a whole kind of thing going on. Balancing the difference between the clean and drives is not super tricky with this, because you've got that gain and master volume bit. So that's pretty good. The clean is actually better sounding live with a bit more volume. I think I had it on about 3 or 4, and you see the master there about where it is. So obviously when I kicked off the master volume is when it was at its loudest. It still wasn't crazy loud, like pretty tame stage volumes, but I was really, really enjoying it. The volume on here, clean at 8. The treble I had at 4, I took that down a bit. Mids at 6, bass at about 4, reverb on 5, and then the overdrive, the gain on 8, and the master on about 7. That's kind of the bit where you live need to kind of balance between when you're kind of strumming some hard, clean stuff so that it doesn't feel like there's a massive boost in volume when you kick to your drive tones, but also you're not kind of sinking back down in terms of volume when you kick to your drive tones. But all in all, definitely something I'd be happy to gig again. Worth bearing in mind also that there's the effects send and return. You could plug your modeler into the return and use this just for the amp side of things. I think it's got plenty of volume based on the fact that I was kind of playing about 3.5 on the volume, or actually most of the time with the reduced master volume on the remote as well. I think I can see why my buddy Sam Brox, who sometimes comments and watches on the channel, has been gigging this in his covers band, I think, for a long time. Once you just program in what your assignments are going to be, it's going to feel pretty much like using a modeler in terms of like workflow to use. It doesn't have the menus, the complexity in it in a lot of ways. It's kind of, to me, like the ideal channel switching amp setup. Sam did say that in the manual it says about not using the recording out and the speaker outs at the same time. I couldn't find that. What I did find in the manual is that it comments that if it's unloaded, so you don't have your speaker in, there'll be more bite and less mids. If it is loaded, more mids, less bite. So using the recording out and the speaker at the same time is cool. But yeah, just wanted to feedback on that, because I think, yeah, I wasn't expecting it necessarily to be quite as simple as it was to get really great tones out of this and actually really enjoy just playing the gig. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you gigged one of these, would you gig one? Alternatives, if you've got them that you want to chuck in the comments, do feel free. Yeah, still a really clever little piece of kit, I think, and simple in a lot of ways, really powerful in a lot of other ways. I could totally see that being an ideal rig. You just chuck that on top of your cab, have your remote, have your HX effects, which could even be run by the MIDI out of this remote. So you could just program your whole rig to be controlled by this, in which case you'd be onto a winner, I think. Great little piece of kit. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Cheers. I guess one of the, just to really seal this as a deal, one of the things that Thomas said to me was like, it doesn't always just want positive feedback, like he's looking to listen to what folks say about these things. So if you've got your suggestions, leave them in the comments. But I've been thinking about weak points with the unit. I guess at the moment it kind of looks kind of expensive if you compare it to things which are sort of in the same sort of area. At the same time, it's a smaller company than those companies, and I think it does quite a lot more than the competition. So is that really a weak point? Maybe not. For me, the tones are there. I would say like the shared EQ potentially could be a weaker point, but at the same time it works so well. Like, why would you go down the route of having like a Mesa Boogie style design where you got tone controls for every single channel? It kind of complicates things a bit. Keep it simple and make it sound good seems to have been the approach as far as I can tell. It also seems to me that it has been designed by someone with gigging in mind. So Thomas does go out and gig with his own band, he books his own band, plays the gigs. It does have that kind of feel to it, like this is something that is designed to work on stage and kind of be pretty simple to use. So I think from a lot of perspectives, a lot of positives. There's no onboard tuner here, so that's one other thing. I guess you got your reverb, you got your send and return. Would I change anything? The recording out, you could maybe spruce up a bit, you know, whether you put an IR loading aspect into it, but at the same time, again, if it sounds good going to your front of house already, Do you need to change that? Personally, I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. If I'd loaded in my own IRs, probably it just sounded slightly worse. So yeah, if I think about it, and there's not really anything that I'd change, to me it just seems like they've kind of got the product right, I think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Anything you change about it.